Now here you see we are dealing with the last part of the chapter. We are dealing with population interaction. Now basically interaction means how two species living or two or more species living in a particular population interact with this. Now here you see we come across these points. First is mutualism. What is mutualism? You see two species are benefited. That means they live together and they are benefited. Now if we come to it, we have the example of lichens. Okay. Now, what is lichen? It is a mutual interaction of a fungi and an algae. Now, what happened? It gives mechanical support. Mechanical support. And what happens to algae? This algae, since it is a green in color, it provides photosynthesis. In the sense, food. That means they have got one provides food and one provides mechanical support. Another example is root nodules. Root nodules. Root nodules, you have the rhizobium. Rhizobium. Now, this rhizobium bacteria, it has the capacity of fixing atmospheric nitrogen, and leguminous plant don't have the capacity of fixing atmospheric nitrogen. So rhizobium gives the nitrogen, and in exchange again here the food. That means what? They both are mutually benefited. In other word, you call it as a symbiotic. Okay, you can call it as a symbiotic relationship. That means mutual give and take. See, both has to participate in anything. Now next comes commensalism. Now here commensalism, or it is also known as mutualism. Okay, that means what? None is benefited. Nobody is benefited and none is harmed. That means they peacefully coexisted. For example, if you see, this is a shell, okay, a simple shell of a snail, and over that, the sea anemone. This is sea anemone, okay. Now here, this is an empty shell that belongs to the snail, okay. It has left the shell, and here one frog. You call it as not frog, sorry, crab. It is hermit crab. Crab lives within the shell. It is eupagerous, and here the sea anemone lives above the shell. See, hermit crab has no business with the sea anemone, and sea anemone has also no business with the hermit crab, but they peacefully coexist on the shell. So that means it is a commensalism. Okay, it is a commensalism. No one needs. See, another one example, sometime, for example, fig. Okay, now fig, it has got a small hole out here, and the seeds are here. Okay, now some small insects and wasps like that, they enter from this hole and reside within it. The seeds has no business to do with the wasp. Some feed on the nutritious medium out here, but the fig tree grows like that. Okay, so this is also an example of commensalism. Now we come across another word that is known as amensalism. Now amensalism, what happened? See, one species is harmed. One species is harmed and the other is benefited. That means we have got one-sided relationship. One-sided. That means only one part is benefited. Now, for example, what are they? You see, number one, predation. Then comes competition. Third comes parasitism. Okay. Now, what is predation? Predation means one preys upon the other. That means praise. That means depends for food. Obviously, the relation is only food. Okay. The one animal kills the other. For example, lion and tiger. Example is lion and tigers. Okay, they are example. Now another is competition. Now you know Charles Darwin's common saying is the survival of the fittest. Okay, that means a survival for the species, they have to fight against each other. For example, we have tropical evergreen forest or deciduous or evergreen forest. Tropical evergreen forest, you see, trees, they don't have sunlight. So the longer they go, the higher, the taller they grow, they get sunlight. So obviously this tallness is an example of competition. Okay, so what are the conditions in which they have to compete? See, for habitat, geographically. Okay, then for food, and then also for mate, for reproduction. So these are the three factors on which the competition lies. See, and then comes the parasitism, and parasitism is also thing when one entirely totally depends on the other. So they might be host specific. That means specific parasite for specific host. For example, a common example is mosquitoes. Mosquitoes would bite only to those that have blood within. Okay, it won't bite, and especially the human, the skin, bare skin. That means they don't have fur or very tough skinned. Also, the mosquito won't bite. So they are host specific. Now, if we comes to host, that means host is actually the victim. That on one organism entirely parasitic adaptation is one entirely depends on the other, either for food, shelter, support, anything. So it may be two host, it may be three host life cycle to complete. For example, if we take up liver flu, liver flu or fasciola hepatica, it is a digenetic trematode. What is digenetic trematode? It is a two host life cycle to complete it. See, liver fluke is a worm. You call it as a bandage thing. It is planarium, like that, like a bandage worm. It is a found in the sheep. It is mainly, it completes the life cycle in a sheep, but to go to sheep, it has to go through the limulus. Limulus is a snail. Firstly, it enters the body of a snail. Then it comes out of the snail's body. It remains on the grass. Then the sheep feeds that grass, and then this fluke enters into the body. And next is the malarian parasite. You see, Plasmodium vivax. Plasmodium vivax is also a two-host cycle. That means it completes the life cycle within the mosquito. That is within the mosquito, it resides into the salivary glands as a sporozoid state, and from there it gets into the human, where it invades the RBC. Okay, here it is in the salivary gland. Salivary gland. Okay, then it is in the human RBC. Then if we talk of parasites, these were all endoparasites. Now parasites are also divided into two. One is the ectoparasite, another is the endoparasite. Now what is an ectoparasite? You see, examples are tick, fleas, lice. Okay, so this tick, fleas and lice, they are all ectoparasite. That means they are parasitic only on the skin, matlab external. Then comes the endoparasite. Endoparasite is within the host body. They are like nematodes, flukes, tapeworm, etc. That goes into the host body. Okay, so you see, we were dealing with population interaction. First, we dealt with Mutualism or symbiotic relationship where two species are benefited with each other. That means both lives in a peaceful coexistence where one and the other, they are benefited. We talked of the example of lichen. See, lichen is a combination, a mutual combination of a fungi and an algae. The fungi gives mechanical support or anchorage to the algae, and algae provides food that by the process of photosynthesis. So that is the main features of a lichen or and it is an example of mutualism. Another symbiotic example, see, we talked of the root nodules of rhizobium bacteria, root nodules of leguminous plant. Root nodules of leguminous plant, they are nodules, see, rhizobium bacteria, they can fix atmospheric nitrogen into soluble nitrates but cannot manufacture its own food. So it's a heterotroph. So for that it needs food. So the algae provides the food. So here it is also an example of mutualism also. Then comes commensalism. Commensalism is a condition. See, it is also they are mutually benefited, but the other does not interfere with the other. I gave you the example of sea anemone on the snails and hermit crab that is living together. So they are not interacted. Then the fig also is an example of that. See, wasps reside inside the fruit and the fruit is also not harmed. Then aminalism is a condition where one predates over the other, or one totally harms the other and one is benefited. Predation, competition and parasitism as an example. So go through these